Hey guys, I'm going to ask you a question. How often have you heard Harry Potter come up in a conversation just randomly in the last 2 years? Think about it. Okay, thought about it? Good. Now, how many times would you have heard the topic of Harry Potter come up, say, 10, 11 years ago? Even 5, 6 years ago. A lot. Let's look at another example, shall we? Twilight. When was the last time you heard a little girl, pre-pubescent girl, go, "I love Edward, Team Jacob"? When? When was the last time you saw Twilight merchandise on sale in a shop? Like HMV or Claire's or Target or Walmart or Asda. When? How? Now, go back to when the films started coming out. How much more often would you have heard a young prepubescent girl scream Edward's name whenever someone mentioned Twilight? Probably a lot more than now. Lord of the Rings came out in 1950. It's been 50 years. Lord of the Rings comes up a lot in conversations. Why? But why? Why does Lord of the Rings have such a big fan base after so many years when Harry Potter, it kind of just fell off? But how many people do you think in about 10 years' time would have known what Harry Potter is? Like, especially young children. How many? Very few. How many children will probably know what Lord of the Rings is in 10 years' time? A lot, probably. Why is this? You know why? Because when Tolkien sat down and started writing The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, he wrote more. He wrote all the companion guides about the elves and all this shadaz. And the fact that the Lord of the Rings is 3 books is also a different story. That's why it works. That's why the fandom is still alive. Why there is so many people still loving Lord of the Rings is because it has a lot of source material and it takes you forever to read it all. And they can make films out of it. They can wean the money from the fan base by shoving Orlando Bloom's face in their faces, wearing a wig, without ears, with a bow and arrow, shooting at people. That's why Lord of the Rings has been so popular after so long. Still so popular after so long. And it's why people like JK and Stephanie Meyer and Suzanne Collins and people who have had a really good book that has come out, wowed the masses, and then wowed even more people who don't read in the cinema, have fallen down on themselves. It's because the authors didn't write any more. You probably sat there thinking, but the series ended. They couldn't write anymore. What stops them from writing a prequel series? What stops J.K. Rowling going, you know what? Though I've written about it in the actual books, I'm going to go into the Marauder's life in much more detail in a prequel series. And what stops Suzanne Collins going, well, you know what? I want to make some more money, or I want to write some more of the Hunger Games, but I finished it. How can I write some more? She could, I don't know, like, write from Finnick's point of view about the Hunger Games and his Hunger Games and him falling in love with Annie, and it would probably tear our hearts out because we all know what happens in Mockingjay. And they should write prequels. You know why? Because prequels to books that have already had an established world or etc. not only do the fandom good and create more films and more populance books in the fandom, but they also work surprisingly well. I'm going to use an example of my favourite novel ever, Mortal Engines. If you haven't heard of it, Google it, because it's really hard to explain, and I am not going to do that in this video. It came out in the 90s, early 2000s, and it has a relatively small fan base as far as I'm aware, or at least a fan base that's on the internet, and it was aimed at sort of like 12-year-olds, but I found that a lot of the older populace enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm a girl, and it was a very guy-y kind of book, and there was a long time between the last book, Darkening Plane, came out and Philip Reeve publishing anything. I think he published something in between, but I can't recall, but it wasn't in the Mortal Engines world. Then suddenly, out of the blue, one day in 2009, bam, on our bookshelves came a prequel series named Fever Crumb. The Fever Crumb series is nearly as good as the original series. It worked. We had a little bit established of what happened before the books, and it's brilliant. Philip Reeve is a genius, and if someone like J.K. Rowling could do that with her series, and it would literally revive the fandom. We'd get more they'd get more fans, there'd be more merchandise being sold, it would become popular again. Harry Potter would become what it was between 2000 and 2011. And it would be brilliant. The same for the Hunger Games, and the same, I guess, Twilight, whatever floats your boat. But authors should write prequels to books for this exact reason. Not to make more money, but to become popular again, because there's probably loads of authors who've read one good book and then they've fallen off the face of the earth, and you don't know what's happened to them. You don't know if they've been gotten by a White Walker or eaten by a zombie or jumped off a building and then come back 2 years later with surprise, bitch, I'm not dead. And there are so many more reasons why authors should write more. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, press like, click subscribe, and I'll see you next week, hopefully.